Hello, I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and you are watching Tom Talks Rubbish. It's the place for interviews, wrestling reviews, and so much more.
Sure, you subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish. I highly recommend you subscribe here first.
Record. There we go.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talks Rubbish, and I'm back with hopefully not the final, but for now, the final interview in my series of interviews with the Cultaholic crew. And this time, I'm joined by Jack the Jobber. So welcome to the show, Jack.
Thank you very much for having me.
I called you Jack the Jobber there, but that doesn't really come up so much anymore, does it?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I suppose not. It's just my Twitter handle now, I suppose. Yeah. Just people just know me as Jack, I guess, now.
Yeah. So if we start at the beginning, obviously you work in wrestling now, you cover wrestling on a daily basis, but where did your wrestling fandom start off there?
Well, that was when I was a kid. So I remember the era, kind of the late Attitude era, sort of like The Rock and Triple H were like the biggest names at the time. It was when Austin was out after he'd been, run over at Survivor Series.
Yeah.
And then, like many people, I kind of fell out of it in my teens, and then I got back into it around sort of the 2011, the pipe bomb, CM Punk, and all that. So yeah, that's kind of the way I went. So I was a fan when I was a kid, fell off, and then came back to it in 2011.
I think I know the answer to this based on the little bit of research that I've done.
Okay.
But what made you fall off? Because, I'm very curious if people have a specific event that makes them fall off.
I don't think there was a specific event in wrestling itself that made me fall off as a fan. I think it was more just getting older, going to secondary school, and how wrestling isn't looked at as the coolest thing a lot of the time, and you want to try and seem cool when you're a teenager and everything. So I think it was more that, but there wasn't necessarily like a moment in wrestling where I was like, oh, this is terrible, because I was too young to critically engage with it on that sort of level.
Were you one of those people that, because I was this, that fell out of it publicly, but then would check results on the sly, stuff like that?
Sometimes, yeah, definitely. Sometimes I remember learning about people coming into it, like Mr. Kennedy and the Boogeyman and people in like the mid 2000s. And I was thinking like, well, I don't recognize these names. What's going on? But again, yeah, without fully getting back into it, I would still try and keep in touch a little bit on the sly. Yeah.
The wrestling is definitely one of those things where you go, what? Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Pull me back in, yeah, definitely.
So how does that then lead to, you get back into it in 2011, and then when did you start with What Culture?
I started with What Culture in 2014, I think, late 2014 on like a trial basis. Then I got offered. Then I got offered a job elsewhere, not in wrestling or anything, just a normal job elsewhere. And then decided that wasn't really for me. Asked if I could rejoin What Culture. They said yes. So I started properly.
So you left for a little while. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, I'd only done like a sort of a week or two kind of trial period at What Culture, and then got offered another job at like a travel agent's, writing holiday brochures and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then after a few months, I was like, well, I'll try What Culture again if they'll have me back. Fortunately, they did, and that was kind of around Wrestlemania 2015 sort of time.
31.
31, yeah, 31.
Is that where Roman and Brock had a decent match, but then Seth cashed it in?
Yes, that's the one, yeah.
Oh yeah. So how does that then? So you left What Culture for a little while, and then decided a normal quote unquote job wasn't for you.
Yeah.
So no, go. Man.
Oh well, I was gonna say like to be fair, I say a normal job, but at the time, my first kind of 10 months or so at What Culture also felt very much like a normal job, because I was writing. Like I wasn't on the YouTube channel at all. I was writing, which I don't want to kind of sell that short because I am sort of I was originally like a writer. That was my background.
Is that what you applied to go do?
Yes, yeah, I was writing on the website. Not necessarily
I did English at uni.
Yeah, I did, and not necessarily on the wrestling section. Like just because obviously the What Culture website's got sports, music, film and TV. So I was writing a variety of things across the website. But then as the wrestling YouTube channel got bigger, we kind of all focused more on the wrestling section. And and then started on camera at the 2016 Royal Rumble or thereabouts.
Was this with Adam and Adam?
Yeah, but Adam Pacitti had he was ill, so he'd taken a little bit of time off, and they just basically needed people to fill in. So myself and Sam and Ross, that's kind of how we first started on camera.
The way Ross phrased it when I interviewed him, check that one out if you haven't already, by the way, was me and Jack were moaning about Adam and Adam getting to drink beer and enjoy the wrestling, and we had to do all the heavy lifting.
Essentially. But then we quickly learned that, it wasn't as easy as it looked straight away.
That was like my follow-up question, and just answered that. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't as simple as that, I suppose. I guess I always found reaction videos where we're just all sat around watching a pay-per-view. I found them really natural and quite easy to get into, which I think speaks a lot to the talent of the other people that I've done it with, because, everyone just makes it so easy and fun to do. But when it came down to actually having my own series and presenting solo videos to camera, that was much more difficult and much more of a skill that I had to learn over time. And I think I'm still learning now. Like, I wouldn't consider myself a natural at all.
I'm the same, because on my channel, I focused a lot on interviewing. Just because that's what the YouTube algorithm likes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then, as I said to you in a previous email, I've joined a wrestling YouTube channel.
Yes.
And I'm reviewing AEW stuff, and having to, once I've done an interview, sit and then do, I've got to talk to camera. Like, that is weird.
It definitely is. But have you found that over time it's become a little bit easier and a little bit more natural?
Strangely, no.
Okay.
Because I don't review and this isn't going to be about me. I should not have.
No, don't worry. To be fair, I asked the question, to be fair.
Yeah. So, because I only review the pay-per-views or Grand Slam, I feel like I don't almost get enough reps in. Okay,
I get what you mean. I found that when you've you almost don't realize that you've improved until months down the line, and then you might go back and watch an earlier one and you'll think, wow, I can't believe I was that bad, essentially. But but it's a positive thing because you realize that you've come a long way.
Is there one video that stands out? And we'll get into your favorite videos and that stuff later. But is there one video that stands out that you're like, I've really improved since that video so far?
Yeah. So back at What Culture, when we were lucky enough to go to Dallas for Wrestlemania 32, I did a video where I was kind of doing vox pops and stuff with the fans in a park outside after WrestleMania, and I had a mic and I was going around interviewing them. And afterwards, everybody told me oh, you nailed it, you've really come a long way. And I thought, yes, awesome. And I've since gone back and watched that, and actually I wasn't as good as I thought I was. So it's weird because that was originally my kind of signpost for wow, I've improved to this level. But now I look back and I think, oh, it could have been a little bit better. But generally, just any random video from a certain amount of time ago, I'll think, wow, I can't believe even a Cultaholic. I can't believe in 2018 I was this way on camera. And I think a lot of that's down to being self-critical, obviously.
Are you a very self-deprecating and very self-critical person?
Yeah, that's probably fair. But I think that being self-deprecating as well can help turn mistakes into humor. So I relied on that a hell of a lot in the early days, and still do occasionally on videos. If I make a mistake, I might make a joke of it and leave it in, or ask the editor to leave it in, obviously. So yeah, I think so. I think I'd probably describe myself as that sort of person. Yeah.
So obviously you were doing stuff for What Culture, just writing for the first 10 or so months.
Yeah.
How did Fast Count then come about?
Fast Count came about.
Frozen?
You have frozen, yeah. I can still hear you though.
Any better?
There you go. There you go. I can see you now. So Fast Count came about because at the time, obviously now on YouTube, there's so much wrestling content being made all over the place. At the time, it was actually way more quiet. Like we were kind of the only channel of our size at the time, and it was still the very early days as well. So we were just looking for different sort of content that we could do. And at the time, you know, a news show on YouTube about wrestling, even though everybody does those now, was actually quite a novel concept at the time. So that's sort of how it came about. Ross had WTF moments. We were like, what can I have? And I think it was Sam Driver actually who saw me as like the news guy first of all.
I was just going to ask, did you go and pitch it to What Culture, or was it sort of What Culture pitched it to you?
Yeah, neither. It was one of my colleagues. I think it was Sam. I'm pretty sure it was Sam, and then we all kind of just ran with it.
So with Fast Count and stuff like that, if I remember correctly, because I should have watched a few of them back today, it was 2 news stories and a takeaway.
I think it changed slightly, but it used to be 3 pieces of WWE news, 3 pieces of non-WWE news, and then takeaways at the end. Yeah.
Okay. So when did you also have to do the research for those news, or was it like someone gave them to you?
No,
like, this is what you're going to do in Fast Count.
No, I wrote the videos myself. Like I made the notes myself. Yeah.
Okay. So, and then something that I'm trying to remember now, something you did very well back in What Culture, in my opinion at least, was a lot of the, like, what I would call feuding character stuff.
Oh, thank you.
So how does that stuff all come about? Because originally it was Adam versus Adam, and then towards the tail end of your What Culture time, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Well, when I turned heel.
yeah.
Yeah.
And forced them to team up, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was kind of I think that was like the summer of 2017. So yeah, probably getting towards the end. It came about because I think that, to be honest, the sort of beginning of that started before I was ever on the channel with Adam versus Adam, as you say, and then I kind of just got involved as well. I always found it quite uncomfortable to do because I really don't rate myself as an actor at all. So I always found it really difficult. And I think that a lot of the other people that I've worked with over the years are like really good or really funny. And I just find it a bit hard to get into a character. It's just not really for me.
I think that's just your self-deprecating side.
Perhaps.
Like, you're a bit like myself in the sense that it takes me a lot to say, oh, that was a good video I did. Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, thank you, first of all. But also, I think maybe if it's a video that I'm on, but I do like, I've like written videos before for other people to do the voiceover for. And when it comes to writing, I think I'm far more confident as a writer than I am as an actor or as a character kind of thing.
Yeah. So, in 2017, I think Survivor Series 2017, was that the first pay-per-view under the Cultaholic brand?
That would make sense. I know that the like the company, like the Cultaholic birthday is on November the 5th, so it would make sense. I think that probably is true.
I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too.
My memory doesn't work very well.
No, same.
So with that, you split with What Culture in late summer 2017?
Yeah, maybe September. Yeah.
So what was that like for you? Because I heard you say on your Desert Island Graps with Tom Campbell that you felt like you were in the best position because you were one of the younger ones.
Yeah, I was younger, and various different reasons, really. I mean, we were all young, but I was the youngest, and I was Ross was the same, to be fair, but I felt like, because I'm from the area, it's not like if it had all gone wrong and Pacitti would have had to like make a decision, like, does he stay in the Northeast or does he go back to the Isle of Wight? Whereas I could always fall back, and my parents were really supportive, and they were very like positive about it, like, just go for it. And if it goes wrong, you'll get another job, and you can stay with us if it goes wrong. And I thought, well, that's really fortunate. I'm in a really fortunate position. So it wasn't, I wouldn't describe it as a scary time necessarily for myself, but it was definitely stressful getting everything together and getting everything, like getting an office space, getting all the content pre-written for launch and everything. So it was stressful, but I wouldn't say it was scary.
Okay. So what has been the biggest change for you personally since moving from What Culture, in the sense that, like, you guys all answer to each other now? Do you find that there's a lot more collaboration?
Yeah, I'd say there's more collaboration. I'd say that the biggest change for me has possibly been, since we've hired more people, we've got quite a few editors and writers and stuff now, which we're very lucky to have. They're like a really talented group of colleagues. Being in more of like a managerial role has been the biggest change for me. It's not it's not something that I find the most natural, and I think that we're just really lucky that everyone we've hired is like superb. So we've just got really lucky.
I should have looked this up, but what is your managerial role there?
Well, I don't have an official managerial role. It's just more of like a, like, for example, it could even be really like basic stuff, like nothing to do with YouTube at all. Like, for example, there was a day a few weeks ago when Ross, Adam, and Sam were all away for whatever reason. Like, I was the only one in the office out of the shareholders or whatever. And these guys turned up to fix the burglar alarm, but instead they set the alarm off, and then we couldn't work out how to turn it off. And I remember thinking, like, oh no, like I'm like in charge now. Like, this is awful. Like, what do I do? And just stuff like that. Like, I've never been in a position before in any job where I've had any sort of like authority, and I don't really feel entirely comfortable being that person. But really, fortunately, like, everyone we work with is like spot on. Like, they're fantastic.
Yeah. So, and then what do you think has been the changes in terms of like videos? Like, do you find that you are more comfortable since moving over to Cultaholic? Like, you find that sort of thing? Yeah.
I'd say that I find it like there's definitely more creative freedom, but it's not necessarily like a total free for all. Like, we all still have to think about ideas that we come up with. We still, will debate or disagree about certain ideas, or like have input, like, oh, maybe this video could be improved in this way, maybe this one could be improved in that way. But it's a far more rewarding experience because we're doing it for ourselves. And
is it one of those where you built it from the ground up, so it's more rewarding sort of thing? Possibly,
yeah, possibly. But at the same time, we were really lucky that, so many of the fan base from What Culture moved over. But just as an example, one of our editors, Dan, he like came up with and pitched the whole idea for the new series that we've been doing, like the kind of the booking wars kind of thing. Yeah. That was all him. Like, he came up with the idea. He like pitched it to us, and we were like, that's brilliant. Like, yes, we'll absolutely give that a go. And then he's been the one editing it and stuff. Like, so it's really cool to see like the newer faces in the office, or maybe the people who aren't on camera necessarily, having that creative input that we had as well. So that's really cool.
Okay. So one question or one topic that's come up a lot when I've had some of the other gents on is particularly the ones that are shareholders wanting to step away from YouTube in a few years' time or something. Is that something that you want to do?
Honestly, my thoughts on that change, like, it almost goes in cycles. So sometimes I'm thinking like, yes, I'm really still enjoying it. Sometimes I'm thinking, well, I've been doing this now for like 6 years, or like, it can, or 5 years, no, nearly 6. Wow. So it just depends on Just depends on the day. But maybe not as quickly as day to day, but for me, I feel like it goes in cycles. Sometimes I'm really up for it still. Sometimes I'm like, maybe I should think about sort of stepping away in the next few years. But honestly, I'm kind of easy with how things are at the minute, to be honest. So yeah.
Fair enough. So the two series, well, I suppose they're the same series. You can tell me if I'm wrong on that. But that I really enjoy that you do or did was Wrestlers of the Week, and I'm gonna butcher the title, and I do apologize.
The greatest of?
Yeah. So, like, something you do really well is unpacking wrestling.
Right, thank you. Right, yeah.
In the sense of, like, you are very good at looking at looking at it analytically.
Right, okay, right.
That was hard to say. I don't.
I got it.
What do you think that is wrestling still a big passion for you? I should have started off there, really.
Yes, it is, but I think I've become maybe more selective about what kind of wrestling I'm passionate about, or maybe my threshold for kind of finding something really good is higher than it once was. Which I think is just normal when you've consumed as much wrestling as we have for a job. That's the key thing. Like when it's your job, you can't help but look at it in a different way. But there's definitely still things that remind me how passionate I am about wrestling. Very fortunately, I really enjoy AEW, and at the minute everything's AEW, you know, so that's a good one.
You AEW shill.
Nah, absolutely, yeah.
Sorry, I had to get it there.
Yeah, of course.
It will be a comment that I'll get.
But it goes both ways, because obviously recently New Japan, for example, have had a really difficult time during and since the pandemic and lockdown and everything. So I feel like they're struggling a bit now, and I don't enjoy maybe New Japan as much as I was in the kind of mid 2000s, late 2010s. Do
you find though that because going back to the analytical and being able to break wrestling down, because it's not your, and maybe I got the wrong end of the stick on this, but because it's not your main passion in life, in inverted commas, you're able to unpack it a bit better and step away for your job sort of thing?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually think, and I'm not, I mean, it's a really good question, but I'm not saying that I disagree necessarily, but I think maybe when I enjoy something the most is when I'm most eager to break it down and to analyze it. So I think if something's really good, I feel like maybe that actually encourages me more to look into why I found it so good. At the same time, if something's horrendous, quite enjoy that as well. Like, why was it so bad? So it's just different ends of the spectrum, I think.
I said this when I had Stephen Larson on the show, but the worst part of wrestling is boring wrestling.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
So, like, when I'm really curious how you put together Wrestlers of the Week or the Greatest of. So, how would that process come about then?
They were kind of totally different processes. So, for Wrestlers of the Week, I would just whenever I had free time in my day throughout the week, I'd catch up on whatever wrestling matches were being talked about that week, whatever was rated high.
Were you watching all of them, or were you literally reading some reviews?
No, I would watch as much as I could, as I possibly could, unless there was, like, you know how sometimes promotions like PWG won't release the footage until much later on and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'd watch as much as I possibly could. Obviously, sometimes I'd have to rely on reviews just because it was impossible or they hadn't released the show yet. And in that case, I'd often say so on video. I think I'd go like, haven't been able to watch this, but here's what I've
If I remember correctly, yeah.
So that was more a case of just keeping on top of everything throughout the week. That's part of the reason that we stopped doing it, is just because it took so much time. With Greatest Of, that was more like writing like a video essay, except I'd be presenting it to camera. So that was more of a single-minded thing and a project for that week that would kind of take over.
When putting together, I have several questions as we break it down, if that's all right.
Absolutely, yeah.
When putting together Wrestlers of the Week and deciding where they go in the rankings is the only way I can phrase that.
Yeah.
Was it like, how did you do it? Was it based on their good match? Was it based on, I'm trying to remember now. Was it based on something, or was it and this is going to sound awful, but was it a little bit of favoritism maybe?
Okay, that's fair enough. I think that, I guess any review show, there's going to be, you can't help but, make it subjective. You can't remain totally unbiased. So definitely some of that will have slipped in, maybe unintentionally, but it will have. Generally, I think the way that I even used to rank the wrestlers would have changed over the course of the 3 years that I did it, just because.
Oh wow!
Yeah, just tastes changed and stuff.
I didn't know you did it for 3 years.
I think I did 3 years of it, or was it 2?
I don't know, but
maybe it was 2. No,
that just makes me feel old and feel like I've been watching your channel for far too long.
Potentially, we're coming up to the fourth birthday, so but
that may have happened by the time this airs, by the way.
Who knows? But I think that, generally I'd look at the quality of the match, how big a result it was. Like if somebody who was a mid-carder pulled off a shocking upset and won a title and the match was good, chances are they'd probably be wrestler of the week. Or if they had like multiple good matches, like say the G1 Climax is on over in Japan, if they'd had multiple amazing matches in 1 week, that always helps. But it just sort of, I probably think it wasn't as consistent as I thought it was at the time. In my head, I was like, yeah, I've got a good system going. But really there wasn't a system. It was just how I felt on any given week.
Fair enough. But then with Greatest Of, how were you picking like topics to discuss then?
Sometimes it would be like if someone was particularly relevant that week for a strange reason. I remember we did one on Christian. That was an early one. And
was that when he debuted?
It was around the sort of time he was debuting in AW. And it was because, it wasn't necessarily because of that. It was because that week, the FTR had gone on Twitter and talked about how amazing Christian was and how normal fans wouldn't be able to understand or recognize why he was so good, like his footwork and all of these tiny little things that only other wrestlers would pick up on. So I thought, well, that's an interesting concept. Like, I'm just a fan. Can I try and notice some of these things? Other times it was quite obvious, like, CM Punk when he was the talk of the town. Some weeks it was just because I think we didn't have anything in particular, so we just threw in a big one. Like in the build up to WrestleMania, there was a few WrestleMania ones. NXT Takeover New Orleans,
if I remember correctly.
Yes, X7. So it was kind of what was topical, but also like Samoa Joe when he got like released. That was one as well. So it was whatever was topical, but also maybe not like the biggest story of that week, just something that people were talking about maybe on Reddit or Twitter.
You may have said this, but as I said to you earlier, my memory does not work very well, so I do apologize. What was it your call for the Greatest Of then? But like, would you say, oh, I'm going to do it on this?
Yeah, usually it was my call. Sometimes I'd go to the other guys with like 2 or 3 different options, and I'd say like, which one do you guys think is best? And then they'd help me come to a decision. But most of the time it was quite obvious which one we should do.
Okay. So then, because I'm really curious how people like create their series. And so like because I think you had, was it 5 points in the Greatest Of?
Yes, it was a break. 5 points, yeah.
So how would you come up with them 5 points?
Sometimes it was really easy. Sometimes they'd be like, if it was a pay-per-view, I'd do like the build-up, the atmosphere, the main event, if the main event was a big one, like Rock Austin, for example.
Yeah.
The undercard.
Your favorite match of all time, if I remember correctly.
Yes, although that might have changed a little bit since then. I'm not quite certain.
We'll get to that.
Okay. I'll keep that for now then. But I think that probably some weeks it was easier to come up with, and sometimes I'd have to kind of just come up with a point out of thin air and disguise it as if it was always part of the process. Like it certainly wasn't like a perfect writing process. Sometimes it was frustrating.
Why did it stop, out of personal curiosity?
That's one that we could always come back to, Greatest Of, because that wasn't as hard and fast and consistent as Wrestlers of the Week. So I think that's one that could always come back. But basically the reason Wrestlers of the Week and Greatest Of stopped was because it was just the views were like slowly declining, essentially.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at the minute, the way the YouTube algorithm is, doesn't leave much room for like patience or experimentation with content. You kind of just got to stick with what works a lot of the time.
Exactly.
Which is a massive shame. Like it's so annoying, isn't it?
This is why I decided to double down in. No, that's not right. Double down on, I meant to say, on interviewing.
Yeah, of course.
Just because that's what works.
Yeah.
And I'm still talking about myself. I do apologise.
Oh, no, don't worry.
It's the habit I really need to out. Horrible. So, speaking of interviewing, something you have done over the last couple of months, and I could have got that slightly wrong, is do Desert Island Grabs.
Oh, yeah.
Occasionally.
Yeah.
So, how did that come about then, that you were going to start doing some Desert Island Grabs?
Well, Desert Island Grabs is like one of my favorite series that we do. I think Tom's really good at what he does. And I think that certain episodes are like really entertaining.
Inspiration to me as an interviewer, by the way.
Oh, he's just an unbelievable interviewer. But I think that I've always really liked it. And also, there's a rapper and battle rapper called Shotty Horror, who's the first guy that I interviewed on Desert Island Grabs.
Yeah.
And I said, like, Tom, this guy's, he's pretty big deal. I think he had a new album coming out as well or something. I was like, he's a huge wrestling fan. Like, he packs his lyrics with so many wrestling references, not like even just obvious ones. At the time that I interviewed him, he just released a song where he referenced Stan Stasiak, like from like the 60s. And I was like, wow, this guy like really knows his wrestling history. I thought he would be great for an interview, but Tom was like, would you rather do it? Because, you're more familiar with him than I am. And I was like, yeah, if that's all right. So then I did him. I've done Dr. Benji, the football manager YouTuber, who I'm a big fan of. And there might be one or two in future as well, which I've not done yet, but hopefully I've got my eye on. But it's normally if it's somebody that Tom...
You're more familiar with.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
No, I get that. So because it's very unlikely that I'm going to get Tom on because he's declined, which fair enough.
I mean, I should point out, Tom does he's got 2 or 3 different jobs. Like he's very, really,
no,
I know.
That's one thing I've learned as I've got into the interviewing game, that like people decline sort of thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But how do you reckon your Desert Island Grabs are different to Tom's? And how is your interview style different?
Honestly, I just think it's a total... Tom's got so much experience. Like, he's got a background in radio. He grew up doing this. And I think that he's got such a sense of like professionalism about it. When you listen to Tom interview someone, sounds like a proper like broadcast. Whereas when I do it, I think it might be a little bit more kind of rough around the edges. Sometimes that can work depending on the guest. I've found that the guest really appreciates it when they can tell that I know about them, basically, and I've done my research. Mm-hmm. But generally, I think Tom's like, it's not even a fair comparison in my mind. Like, Tom's one of the best wrestling interviewers.
Oh, I'm not comparing. I'm just genuinely curious.
No, but I'm saying, like, if I were to compare, I'm not blaming you, but I'm saying, like, for me, I can't even really put myself in the same conversation as Tom, because I think he's far and away, like, such a good interviewer, man. Like, he's really good.
Oh, I agree.
100%.
Like, he's on my Mount Rushmore of interviews.
Yeah, it's Kenny McIntosh as well. Fantastic. Really, really good.
Sending all the love to Kenny, by the way.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, on the off chance that he watches this.
Yeah.
But that won't happen. But
well, I'll give it a retweet. He might. You never know.
Yeah, we'll see. But I appreciate that. So what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought there.
I think we're talking about how I've done Desert Island Grabs. Yeah.
So how do you... Because this is something I still call myself an aspiring interviewer because I don't feel qualified to call myself an interviewer yet.
I would as well. That's the same for me.
Like, how do you prepare for your Desert Island Grabs? Grabses?
I had a few questions and then I'd kind of keep them a bit loose. So like, I'd kind of think of certain things that I wanted to ask. Really, fortunately for me as well, Desert Island Grabs has got a built-in format already. So you've got the 3 matches and then the
3 matches, the
album,
movie,
yeah,
and the album, correct?
And the luxury item, yeah. So I just thought, well, that's the framework. And then I've just got to think of questions about them to try and work in. that's where I think Tom's really differ from mine, because he's really seamless. He suddenly I remember doing mine with him and thinking, oh, this is going to be a talk about wrestling. But the trick is that it's not. It's about
It
the
does
person.
quite an
It's about the
emotional
person.
moment as well.
Yeah.
Like, because that's something that I'm learning. When an interview goes down an emotional bit, because I'm not good with my own emotions, it's like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah, I think in my Des Island Graps with Tom, it didn't really go down that route, possibly because I didn't want it to. Subconsciously, I was just like, I don't really want to. But sometimes they can be obviously the most effective ones. Adams, for example, yeah, 100%.
So, like, one thing I'm curious about is how do you, when an interview, like maybe you haven't had this, but when an interview's not going as well as you think, or maybe the guest isn't responding to questions, have you got a strategy for getting them back?
No, I just panic.
Fair enough.
I think I've been really fortunate that that none have gone too badly. But my first ever interview with a wrestler was with Alberto Del Rio, when I was working at What Culture for like WCPW. Okay. Del Rio's like, obviously since then, really controversial guy. Various things have been said about him.
These are the opinions of everyone else, and not the opinions of Tom Talks Rubbish.
Not legally. So
sorry, that was the phrase I was looking for.
Yeah. Allegedly, he's been accused of various things. But
allegedly,
even before all this came out, or even before any of this, still like an intense guy, and like
a salty dude.
Mate, he's so intense. And I was, before the interview, he was like towering over me as well, like in the corridor that we were doing the interview in.
I am listening. I'm just getting a drink of water.
No worries. And he was like, what do you want to, what questions have you got? Can you just run?
You think he was in character?
No. This was before the cameras were rolling. And he was like, what questions have you got? Like, just run your questions past me. And I was like, okay, I've got a question about this, question about that, blah, blah. And I said, a question about something to do with WWE. And he just went, I don't want to talk about WWE. And I'm like, right. So I've got like in my head, I'm like rewriting my interview as like in my head. So I think I just cut the question out and just left it. And the interview was shorter than intended because I couldn't think of something.
At the time of recording, he thinks he's going back.
Well, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but probably never going to see him again.
I hope not.
Me too. To be fair, in the interview itself, he was fine. Like nothing weird happened in the interview itself. So I should clarify just that.
Yeah, definitely. But even Adam said something in my interview with him that a question that I'll ask you later is the video that he'd want to get rid of is him announcing the arrival of Alberto El Patron, I think was his indie name.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Is that the one where, what happened?
WCPW, apparently.
I need to remember what happened. Is that the one where he
goes, sorry, Vince.
Oh, that one. Oh, man. Yeah.
So, as we wrap this up, because we've been going for about 40 minutes or so.
Okay.
And obviously, it's a Tuesday evening at time of recording, and I want to be respectful of your time.
Oh, thank you very much.
So,
I have had a good time though, so I can.
No, I've enjoyed this.
Still do a few more questions. Okay, cool.
I will say, shout out to everyone at Cultaholic that's allowed me to interview them, as you will be the final one for now.
Cool.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, all I can say is, I don't know where my channel would be without you guys.
Oh well, thank you very much. I mean, it's amazing to hear that as well. So thank you very much.
Yeah, but I've gone off train of thought again. So when it comes to like your weekly schedule, what wrestling do you feel like you have to watch for work, and then what wrestling would you be watching if, say, you were working in Asda or somewhere like that?
Yeah. So for work, generally stuff we talk about on the podcast first and foremost. So AEW, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, although that's becoming a bit of a different kettle of fish now, NXT. And then also just whatever big shows are on. So, you know, if there's a huge New Japan event or a huge, I can't even think of anything at the minute, but like if there's huge events from other promotions as well, And then
NWA, for example.
yes, NWA. And then if I was just working outside of like wrestling, I think I'd watch far less of it. Certainly the weekly TV, but I'd probably still watch big pay-per-views regardless of whether it was AEW, WWE, New Japan. I think also I'd be tempted to watch Dynamite on a weekly basis because I think even though it's had its ups and downs, I think Dynamite can often be relied upon to put on like a fantastic weekly show.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
A question with watching Dynamite every week. Do you think you feel more connected to it because you used to be the graded guy for it?
Oh, possibly. I think that's definitely got some bearing on that. But I
Only
think
because
Mhm.
Sam said in an interview that I did with him that he feels connected to SmackDown because he was graded.
Sam's really good at really becoming involved with whatever he's on at the time. So he used to do 205 Live, and he was the only one out of all of us who like really was engaged with 205 Live.
Didn't that happen on a WrestleMania reaction?
Yeah.
Against him, and he was like, "You should watch the show."
He's the only one who picked Tony Nese to win, and we were all like, Tony Nese isn't going to win, and he was the only one who got that prediction right. Yeah. So definitely Sam is really good for that. With me, I think that AEW is kind of reminds me the most of the wrestling that I grew up watching. It's got that slightly chaotic feel of the Attitude Era. Anything could possibly happen. They're not afraid of taking a risk. Like sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. Like the Jericho cage fall wasn't the best, but they go for it. And I think they were always looking to do something different. So I think that's possibly why. But I did really enjoy covering it, graded as well. So that definitely probably helped.
One thing that I am curious about when covering wrestling shows for graded, do you literally write down notes of, because this is something that I'm learning for when I'm reviewing wrestling. So this is just a general curiosity thing, really. Do you like write down every move that happened, or do you get the basic story of the match?
I think that depends on the individual presenter. So me personally, I'm more of a bullet point kind of guy, and I think you can probably tell watching my videos that I'm not reading from a word for word script, because that just doesn't work for me as well. Whereas some people like Ross, for example, because his jokes are so like they're quite punchline heavy and really funny because of that. He works way better when he's like written them down and got the timing right and everything. So I think it just depends on the individual presenter. But personally, I work best off like bullet points.
What do you think you'd be doing right now if you weren't working in wrestling?
Hopefully something to do with writing, because as you mentioned, actually, that's what I did at university. I did English literature.
This is where research pays
absolutely
off.
100%. I'd be doing something to do with writing. I think possibly like I really think that, well, to be honest, I really don't know, because there's so many different writing jobs out there. Maybe I'd be like a freelance writer or something. Maybe I'd be trying to get into journalism potentially. There's various different ways it could have gone, but definitely something to do with writing.
Still be a wrestling fan?
Yes, but I don't think I'd be as frequent a viewer of wrestling.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
So one thing I am curious to cover, because I had your good friend, I assume he's your good friend because you live together, Owen, on recently. And I'm very curious how him living with you and Sam came about from your perspective, because I've heard it from his.
Yeah. All I can remember is that it was kind of me and Sam were kind of in a bit of a sticky situation. Go on.
How did you come to live with Sam? And you may have covered that before, and I apologize.
Don't worry. That's because with Sam, we'd become friends at What Culture, and I'd also become friends with his friend Gilly. His real name is Ross, but we call him Gilly. So I'd become friends with Sam and him and like some of Sam's other mates. And Sam was very much like my best mate at What Culture. So Gilly and Sam were looking to move into a place. I'd actually moved back home at the time, so I was living with my parents again. And then I wanted to move back out. And they were like, we've got a room, we need another like another person to live in here.
Was
So
this
that,
while you were working at Work Culture?
yeah. This was like probably like August 2016 or so. So like, and then I lived with Sam for like 2 years in that flat. That's the flat where the earliest Cultaholic news videos were shot on our.
Where
like,
you were sitting
sofa.
on his little couch.
Yes, and then Gilly moved out into a different flat. We're still all friends, like nothing wrong happened, but
Yeah.
Gilly moved away. Me and Sam needed to find somewhere else because the landlords were selling the flat. So the only place we could find was a 3-bedroom. We needed another tenant, and we just happened to hire Owen at that time. He was moving.
He said he just moved from Liverpool.
He was moving up from Liverpool, and I think we threw him in the deep end, to be honest, because he'd never met us, and suddenly he's living with us. Like, it must have been a bit strange for him, but thankfully, like we got on really well.
What was it
straight away?
What was it like? Because the way he told me this story was you were in Japan at the time.
Yeah, that's right. We were. Oh man.
And he had moved his stuff in while you were away, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Like,
he had.
And because your flight had been delayed by 24 hours, correct?
No, we missed the flight.
What?
Yeah.
Can you tell that story? Because
Of course,
yeah.
well, yeah. Do you want me to finish this one first, or do you want me to tell the Japan story now?
Finish this one and then
Cool.
the Japan story, if that's all right.
Yeah. So yeah, Owen moved his stuff in while we were stuck in Japan. Yeah. And then we met him for the first time when we came back. He'd been working for us remotely for a little while.
Yeah.
So we'd already like communicated over like, Messenger, but we'd never met. So it was really lucky that we all got on. So yeah.
Was that instant, or was it like, we don't know about this guy?
I think it was pretty instant, to be honest, because he was just enthusiastic, and Owen's like a really nice guy, so it was easy.
The nicest guy in the world.
So
like,
nice.
One of my favorite interviews that I've done.
I'll let him know. I'll let him know you said that.
I loved it. As I've loved this, by the way.
Thank you very much. But the Japan thing. Yeah, so before I tell this story, Sam has admitted in the past that it was his fault, not my fault, right? Okay. So there was 3 of us in Japan, obviously for Wrestle Kingdom, myself, Sam, and Richard Tubman, our editor, really talented guy, great guy. He was staying in Japan for another week as like a holiday. He'd booked that time off. So me and Sam were the only 2 coming back on that day. We were checking what time our plane left, what the departure time was, and it was like 4 PM. And then
don't tell me put 4 PM our time instead of 4 in the.
No, not quite.
Just quickly, you can't hear any music, can you?
I heard like a really brief flash there, but I can't hear it. Not now.
My family are being really disrespectful and playing music.
No, don't worry. It was like a really quick. It wasn't like I couldn't tell it was music, to be honest. But we woke up at like 8 or 9. I remember Sam got in the shower.
Was this the night after the Tamatonga thing?
No, which I'm pleased about because I was hungover. No, this was just the last day. We hadn't really done much the night before. So we just woke up quite relaxed. Sam got in the shower. I was about to get in the shower after he'd finished. He was dressed.
Yeah.
And then he checked the boarding pass or the departure time, and he was like, "Oh no," because the 4 PM thing was the time that we would land for our layover in Amsterdam. So it turns out our flight was leaving at like 11:25 AM. So I didn't have time to get a shower. I felt gross. We just got in an Uber and just like headed to the airport. Just missed it. But I will shout out the airline KLM because they didn't charge. They've got like a flat tire rule, I think it's called. They didn't charge us. They didn't charge us much at all to get on the next flight. The only problem was the next flight was exactly 24 hours. So we spent it. That's a day of my life I'll never get back. Just in the airport. Like,
was it one of those where you were like, "What do we do now?"
Yeah, we were very, very bored. But at least, it could have been worse, I guess. It could have been worse. We look back on it now and laugh about it. But at the time, we were absolutely devastated. Like, we couldn't believe it.
I'm looking at the time. We've nearly been going an hour, but I've just come up with a load of other questions.
Okay. Oh, no, don't worry.
How did you find, because I know this is something that I struggle with, vlogging, because I know you did that in Japan. How did you find that?
Pretty all right. I quite enjoyed the relaxed presentation style of it. One thing I'm terrible at personally is camera work. So if I was the one holding the camera, it would have looked awful. Thankfully, Sam and Richard are both much better at shooting footage than I am. Found that pretty good. I enjoyed those Japan videos, and I think people enjoyed them too. The comments were pretty positive on those, even if we weren't doing anything wrestling related, and we were just like, here we are in like a sushi restaurant or whatever.
I'm a foodie, so I enjoyed seeing the food.
The food in Japan was amazing. Like, I'm not a big fan of seafood, but obviously in my head I was like, it's just going to be.
You love wasabi?
Well, yeah, I do love it. Of course I do. But I'm not a big fan of seafood. Obviously in my head I was like, it's all going to be seafood. It's not. And all the food there was just, it was incredible. It was crazy. But
Fair enough. So do you have, say COVID not obviously goes away, because it will never go away now, but COVID restrictions in Japan become less, or like COVID gets better in Japan, I'll put it that way. Do you have a desire to go back as just a tourist?
Possibly, yeah. I never thought I did, but I think COVID's put a lot of or lockdown has put a lot of things in perspective. Like, I maybe want to do more stuff, you know. At the time, I enjoyed Japan definitely, but I felt like Sam and Richard both enjoyed it on like a much bigger level, because they're both way more into like Japanese culture anyway than I am.
I wish I'd asked Sam about more Japanese stuff.
Oh, the interview would have lasted like 6 hours.
2 days.
Yeah. But I mean, I think I probably would go back now. Yeah. I didn't think so at the time. I always said I'd go back for work because I enjoyed it, but it wouldn't be like my top place to return to. But now I think I probably would. It was really
You're
cool.
the only one that I can ask this question.
Okay.
Well, I could ask Sam, but I completely forgot because my brain doesn't work very well. How different is seeing, as someone that doesn't live in both countries, how different is seeing Japanese wrestling live to American wrestling live?
I know the stereotype exists that Japanese crowds are like quiet, but they just make noise in different ways. So there's some chanting and there's clapping, and honestly, the show we were at, there were a lot of Westerners there anyway, so it was a real mixed environment.
Fair enough.
I think if there is a difference, I probably wasn't there at the right time to notice it.
No, I get what you mean. So as we wrap this up, because we've been going about an hour.
Cool.
So I'm going to now go into generic wrestling questions.
Oh, fantastic. Here we go.
So you touched on this earlier, but favorite match of all time?
As you said, it was Rock Austin 2 at WrestleMania 17, but now I'm probably going to change that to CM Punk John Cena at Money in the Bank 2011, because I look back on it and I think if it wasn't for that match and that feud and Punk's promo, then I wouldn't be doing the job that I am now. So, and it's a great match as well.
Since CM Punk is now back in the wrestling sphere and you're an AEW guy, have you enjoyed the two amalgamating and CM Punk being back in wrestling?
Yeah, massively. I'm kind of waiting for when the hype dies down and it becomes like, it's not a surprise to see him anymore.
I don't think it will for a while.
Not for a while. And Punk's, if anyone can keep things fresh, especially on the microphone, CM Punk.
Favorite pay-per-view of all time?
Selfishly, just because I was there and it was awesome, I'll go Double or Nothing, the first one.
I hate you. I want to be you.
It was especially Cody versus Dustin. Like, that match was insane.
My first non-WWE pay-per-view, that was.
Awesome. I'll also give a shout out to WrestleMania X7, of course, WrestleMania 30, NXT TakeOver New Orleans, and Wrestle Kingdom 11 in New Japan.
You guys should just do top 10 lists of your favorite pay-per-views.
Yeah.
Favorite wrestler currently, and then favorite wrestler as a kid.
My favorite wrestler as a kid was Triple H. I don't know why. Just love Triple H. My favorite wrestler currently is, just for the storyline that's been going on. He's not like my favorite from a pure in-ring standpoint, but I'll give it to Hangman Page at the moment. Yeah.
So this will go out before Full Gear. Do you reckon he's taking the belt off? Kenny?
I don't know, but I really hope so. I hope they don't get
So
too.
do I.
I hope they don't get too complicated and do it like at the second attempt. I think we've waited long enough, and I think if he just beats Kenny decisively, like the roof will go off.
I was watching a video that I can't think the other day. It was like Hangman's had his loss because he lost that tag team match.
Yeah,
And then got booted in the face with a belt, sort of thing.
And he lost to Kenny in that tournament as well. Yeah, it's time.
That was a thing, wasn't it?
I think it's time for him to win.
Yeah, I agree with you. Moment that you realised you're good at this.
At presenting videos.
Yes. Or writing videos, either one.
Writing, I was always pretty confident at because of like my background in English. But presenting, the moment that I thought I was all right would have been, there was a random episode of Graded once. I think
Graded? We're not even going what culture?
Well, there's been various different, like I said earlier, there's been various different videos where I've like thought, yes, now I've reached the next level. And then I've looked back on it in a couple of years and been like, really? Like, did I think that? So the most recent one that I can think of anyway would be Graded. Can't remember exactly when it was, but it was a random Raw. And I was covering for either Tom or Adam or whoever did Raw Graded because they were off that day.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bad Raw. I just tore into it. It was when the Viking Raiders and the Street Profits were bowling. And I hated it so much.
Was it during when their feud was anything you can do, I can do better?
Yeah. And I just hated it so much. And I normally like being positive about wrestling, but sometimes you've just got to be negative. And I was.
Oh, yeah.
And that people liked it in the comments, man. Like people were like, yeah, Jack hammered this, but it was deserving of criticism. So I thought that, and I watched it back and I thought that I delivered things well. And you could tell I was passionate about what I was talking about. So that's the most recent one in my mind where I'm like, yeah, like I nailed that. But other examples would be like that Dallas one that I mentioned where I'm interviewing people, and the what was it? There was another one as well. For writing, I, not to brag, but I wrote the our big every WWE champion ranked list.
You wrote the entire thing?
Yeah, it took a long time, but I was really proud of that one. Bless you. I was really
dying.
I was really proud of that one. And I think that even though I don't appear in it, it's probably one of the videos that I'm most proud of.
Mm-hmm. So that brings me nicely to the segue of the question that I always end on.
Okay.
Which is, with YouTube, obviously, we're all gonna, in some ways, unless YouTube self-destructs, live forever. So what is one video that you're like, if Adam could take that down, I'd appreciate that, or I've grown a lot since then. But I know we've covered that a lot in this video. And then what is one that you're like, that is my body of work, that is what I'm proud of. If you want to know what I'm about as a presenter, watch that. Or as a writer, either one. Okay,
so for the one that I'm, well, as a writer, of course, that list, that big list, the every WWE champion ranked. And I should, while we're at it, shout out our writer Jack Atkins, who has written a lot of the more recent long ranking ones, like the some of the more recent ones that have come out. He writes those long ones now, and I don't know how he does it because it takes it out of me when I do it. Like, it takes a long time, but he seems to enjoy it for some reason. But
when you're writing, then,
yeah,
is it literally you do it in one day, or is it like
no, those ones take longer, like much longer. Whereas like Graded, I'd write an episode in a day. But in terms of videos that I've presented or been on, I really enjoy our WrestleMania reactions videos, especially the ones in person. I think that even though it's not necessarily like a Jack video, like one of my videos, I think they've been some of our best ones because people enjoy watching four guys watch wrestling and react as they hopefully would as well. And I think we all kind of get our own little moments to shine in those videos, and we all get quite a few funny moments. So the WrestleMania reactions, more the ones in person than the Zoom ones, even though not the Zoom ones, but the edited together.
I know what you mean.
More so the ones where we're all sat around, and in terms of something I'd like to be taken away.
Or just something that maybe taken away isn't the right phrase, but like something that you're like, that is, I've grown a lot since then. I don't recommend you watch that sort of thing.
Yeah. I'll go for like, I mean, it'll probably be a What Culture one because I was less experienced then. I'll probably say like the earliest of early fast counts where I was just so terrified to be on camera. So probably those ones. Yeah.
Well, to be honest, Matt, I want to end on a happy question.
Okay.
So like, this is going to sound so generic, but are you excited for the future of Cultaholic? Are you excited for the future of wrestling, etc.?
Yeah, and I think those two things are probably linked because if wrestling continues to be exciting, hopefully we can put out more exciting content. But I'm also excited because kind of the workforce that we've got now, like the people we've hired, they're all just great guys and it makes coming to work fun. So it was fun when it was just the four of us at the start, of course. But I mean,
I can imagine it was a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, and it's just nice to be in a proper, like, feels like a proper friendly environment. So and everybody, as I've mentioned like a few times already, everybody's really good. So yeah, definitely excited. Yeah.
As I say, to be honest, I always end my videos like this, but I think that's a beautiful way to end it, my friend.
Fantastic.
And obviously, if you like this video, check out Jack on Cultaholic. What specifically nowadays can the people find you on?
On Twitter at Jack the Jobber, and on Cultaholic, basically. I've got an Instagram, can't remember it off the top of my head, but
what specific series is I meant?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking for social media stuff. Sorry, God, what a YouTuber thing to do. I'm so sorry. So on series specifically, you can find me on the podcast every week. We can find my work, I suppose, on occasional videos here and there that I've written from behind the scenes. You can find me on the True Story of series, which is written by the very talented Justin Henry. And you can find me on Twitch every Wednesday at 6 p.m. with Owen as we play Football Manager. So quite a few different things going on.
So, and then plug your social medias again, like, because
at Jack the Jobber on Twitter, my Instagram, I can't remember off the top of my head, but the link for the Instagram's in my Twitter bio, I think.
Yeah.
And Cultaholic Wrestling on YouTube.
Obviously, check out the boys. Subscribe to me while you're there.
100%.
Because I'd love to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the year.
Oh, go on.
It's day to day at the minute. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but still push for it. You never know.
Mate, considering I started with 0 at the start of the year, I'm really happy. So,
yeah.
Anyway, if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will obviously see you in the next one. Bye.
Right, I'll hit stop on the thing. Thanks very much, man. That was awesome.
Really?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Right, if I stop recording.